Lord of the Mysteries. Chapter 1130. News Storm. Two sequence 3 demigods were guarding the main door. As expected of the giant king's court. The divine kingdom of an ancient god. The members of the Tarot Club suddenly felt a similar feeling. As for the son Derek, he didn't pause as he continued his recount. To him, he was shocked when he first discovered the two silver knights guarding the main door of the giant king's court. However, the series of events that followed made it seem extremely ordinary, making it difficult to stir up his emotions. According to what Mr. World shared, we followed a rather hidden path to the back of the giant king's court. The monsters we encountered were mainly wraiths. They were restrained by the unshadowed crucifix. After we arrived at the waning forest, we tried to explore it, and we discovered that the remnants of the giant king's will and the divine kingdom's powers had formed an evil spirit. It was protecting its parents' mausoleum. Derek skillfully recalled his experiences during the expedition, and the members of the Tarot Club, Audrey, Alger, and the others, quickly reined in their thoughts of the Silver Knight Guards and listened attentively. They were all very interested in the secret hidden in the waning forest. They wanted to know what the ancient god, the giant king, had tried to keep from his queen and child. Thinking back to the scene he had seen, Derek paused for a moment before saying, "After purging that evil spirit, we came to the mausoleum of the giant king's parents. There was a stone stele erected there, indicating the identity of the tomb's owner. As for the tomb and coffin, it had long been opened by someone, revealing the corpses inside. They were the corpses of two humans." Corpses of humans? The tomb of the giant king's parents had corpses of humans buried in it? Godfather and godmother? No, there wasn't any religion back then. As a demigod who knew plenty of mysteries, the hermit Katla's first reaction was that the two corpses had another identity. Immediately following that, she recalled what the queen had mentioned. It was a question that Emperor Roselle had asked as though he had been talking to himself when he was alive. Why did the ancient documents and historical records refer to giants, elves, vampires as humanoid creatures or anthropoid creatures? Why didn't they refer humans as giant-like, elf-like, or vampire-like creatures? Could it be that all humanoid creatures had descended from humans? The giants, elves, and vampires were the mutations brought by the Beyonder characteristics that could eventually become inherited? Katla instantly calmed her emotions as she seriously considered the possible reasons. At this moment, she felt that her potion would be digested to a certain degree once she returned to the real world. This was because the sequence 4 of the mystery prior pathway was called Mysticologist, and the origins of the giants and humanoid creatures were without a doubt mysticism knowledge of extremely great value that most ordinary demigods had no way of knowing. The giant king's parents were humans? That must be fake. Alger immediately suspected that someone had fabricated the scene. However, on second thought, this act not only required the real remains to be taken away and replaced with human remains, but one had to prepare a suitable coffin to make the tomb look like it didn't belong to a giant. Furthermore, fabricating it was pointless and wouldn't affect reality too much. Alger felt that no one would be so bored as to do something like that. To be able to enter the giant king's court and suppress a powerful evil spirit, the person that approached the two graves was at least a saint, meaning that they had long passed the age of pulling pranks. Could it be that the ancestors of all creatures were humans? This includes the elves? As he had seen too many shocking things at the Tarot Club, as well as suffer a religious breakdown from the mural on that primitive island, Alger didn't have overly intense emotions run through him. He just couldn't help but raise his hand and touch his dark blue hair. Mr. Hangman connected himself to this matter? The giant king's parents are actually humans. From the looks of it, most of the creation myths are fake. They were all fabricated by future generations. However, there are also hidden meanings in them. Mr. Moon seems to find it unacceptable. Mr. World seems to have known about it long ago. With the help of placate and other psychological techniques, Audrey was able to compose herself the fastest, and she instinctively observed the reactions of the other members. At that moment, Emlyn was the most restless. His mind was filled with thoughts of impossible, and it's impossible. If the original ancestor of giants were human, then what about the sanguine? Could it be that we were just monsters that had mutated because of beyonder characteristics? Impossible. We were clearly created by the ancestor. She has the authority of life and creation. It's completely different from the barbaric deities like the giant king and elf king who only knew how to fight. As Emlyn's thoughts churned, he felt a baffling feeling that his pride was cracking apart. His intuition, his rationality, and brain told him that the son Derek didn't have any reason to lie about this matter. The possibility of other existences fabricating the scene was also very low. Hence, he subconsciously expelled the giant and elves from the ranks of humanoid creatures, and he viewed them as a branch of humanity. Leonard, Furs, and Zio quickly accepted the possibility that the son revealed. To them, regardless of whether the giant ancestor was giant or human, or even a curly-haired baboon, it was no big deal. At most, it just meant that many supernatural creatures were a result of excess beyonder characteristics in the bodies of ordinary creatures, but this didn't cause any meaningful changes to their concept of reality. The son Derek calmed himself down and continued in the strange silence. After leaving the waning forest, we entered the giant king's court through the barren tunnel. On the way, there were remnant powers of corruption and concealment. We had to make the correct response in order to pass. That palace contains a mural that possesses powers related to the cycle of fate. As such, we were affected and transformed into the people who participated in a gathering. We repeated a very short process, and this process was the establishment of Rose Redemption. At this point, Derek looked around and saw that all the members had temporarily jolted out of their previous states. They were extremely interested in the organization called Rose Redemption. They all knew that this was an extremely secretive and ancient organization that followed and believed in the true Creator. It was the origins of the Aurora Order, and its members were kings of angels like Ouroboros, Medici, and Sasser. Derek retracted his gaze and exhaled silently. The two people who convened the Rose Redemption are Dark Angel Sasser and Evernight Goddess Ammonizes. Audrey, Leonard, and Zio began to doubt their ears. They were all believers of Evernight. They never expected that the goddess would be a member of Rose Redemption, and even be one of its conveners. This was akin to saying that the Evernight goddess was a member of the Tarot Club. If not for the fact that they knew what kind of person Little Sun was, knowing that he wouldn't lie, they definitely would have suspected the truth of this matter. But now, they were left temporarily speechless. They didn't even dare to think too deeply about it. Alger subconsciously turned his body to look at the sun, listening to his slow and heavy tone. The participants included White Angel Aucuses, Wind Angel Leotaro. Alger's eyelids twitched. He didn't even dare think. God of Combat Badhile, Earth Mother Omabella. Emlyn, who was leaning against the back of the chair, unknowingly sat up straight. There was only one message echoing in his mind: the goddess of harvest, Giant Queen Omabella. God of the dead Salinger, God of spiritual creatures Tolzna. The son Derek's voice echoed in the ancient and magnificent palace. It made Katla, Furs, and the other members exchange looks. No one dared to say a word. It was as though they would suffer from divine punishment if they learned any deeper. After Derek finished speaking, they remained silent. The scene was strangely quiet. Finally, Katla sighed and said, Rose Redemption truly is powerful and terrifying. Before this, I couldn't even imagine that those existences were members. Just as she said that, the World Gehrman Sparrow said with a deep, hoarse voice, that was an organization formed to resist the ancient sun god. Later on, only a few kings of angels remained. Upon hearing their conversation, it was as if Audrey and the other members had just snapped out of their dreams. All of them subconsciously cast their gaze to the end of the long, model table, at the figure shrouded in gray fog. It was as though they were waiting for the conclusion from the authority there. The fool Klein, who had long expected such a scene, didn't respond directly. He nodded slightly and sighed. The fallen creator was born because of this. It's real. It's real. The rose redemption which Mr. Fool hinted back then actually has such a deeper meaning. What is his identity in ancient times, and what position does he take in this matter? All these thoughts instantly formed a storm that swept through the minds of the Tarot Club members. Derek looked at everyone, and seeing that no one was speaking, he could only talk about the subsequent exploration. We met the leader of the King's Court's chasers outside the palace, Light Color Merskogen. He said that Dark Angel Sasser was in a state of slumber in that palace. Compared to the matter regarding Rose Redemption, news of the mysterious Dark Angel currently in slumber inside the Giant King's palace didn't stir up the emotions of Leonard, Emlyn, and the other members of the Tarot Club much. Only some of their curiosities had been satisfied. Of course, as a mysticologist, Katla only hoped that the sun could speak a little more. After that we returned. Mr. Fool has bestowed us with the formula for the Silver Night potion. Towards the end of his explanation, Derek concluded honestly. Audrey and the others were still deep in thought over what had just happened. There was still a fear of being blasphemous, and no one responded. Only Alger thought for a moment and said, "Since the birth of the true creator originated from Rose Redemption, then he isn't unfamiliar with what happened in the Giant King's court. Why is it that Shepherd Elder Lovia was completely unprepared for this?"